will look forward to following up with the workshop. And the next one is the low-cost measures to expand active travel network. So Michelle is presenting on behalf of the active travel team, and I am conscious that both for the purposes of time and the fact that it was included in the report pack, we are going to take the report largely as read. But Michelle, if you want to give a 2-minute overview of it now, please do, and then I will open to the floor.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Michelle Murphy, Senior Active Transportation Officer in Active Travel. I'm here with a number of my colleagues from the team who were involved in this report. David Conway, one of the engineers, Gráinne O'Brien, Senior Engineer, and Jeremy Wales, Senior Exec Architect. So just to provide some context to this report, we have a map up on screen, and Dr. Sinnott, you would have received a written description of this in your pack, and it's just up on screen for discussion purposes. So when Active Travel reviewed the request on how to accelerate the delivery of the network, we looked at many options. We wanted to make sure that the priority schemes were maintained, and the design teams will continue on with this. But when looking at this, in order to achieve this, it is going to require a reduced scope through low-cost interventions. And so we kind of looked at this, and then we thought the most effective approach was to identify locations where interventions can be delivered quickly. So two options for this were to provide a cross-city link, and also maybe to look at quiet ways. How are we going to deliver this? We had a look at a number of options, and through the use of robust materials such as precast curbing, lane separators, traffic management interventions, we thought this will be the most appropriate way, something like we've done on Nassau Street and we are proposing to do on the South Circular Road. So it'll be something similar to that. But what we needed to make sure was that whatever we do is safe, it's practical, it's capable of remaining in place for many years. And so we needed to establish a basis for assessing this viability of the accelerated low-cost active travel measures. So a list of those criteria is on page 2 of the report. So we looked at the cross-city links. We looked at maybe 2 routes as a prototype. We wanted to ensure that there was connectivity with our completed active travel schemes. And we also wanted to have the connectivity with the schemes that we're currently delivering. So our assessment kind of demonstrates that this acceleration, it may be feasible where sufficient carriageway already exists. And we've identified where there will also be continuous segregation. We've also identified where that currently can't be achieved without substantial redesign. So that would also be one of the criteria. We also looked then at the quiet streets. And we looked at a number of routes have been identified. We think one on the north side, one on the south side. And that we could deliver this in part or in its entirety using the quiet streets, which is a method of adapting the side streets through traffic calming measures and providing a shared space with vehicles. So just to say that when it is just a high-level assessment that we've carried out so far, that we would need substantial design development to ensure that this proposal is acceptable and is feasible. The accelerated delivery, though, will also require a relaxation of standards that are set out in the Cycling Design Manual. All of this is obviously subject to governance and approval requirements. But what we think over the next coming months, we could take a look at this in depth. So we would like to continue the design for the remainder of 2026 and then maybe perhaps look at construction 2027 into 2029. So if we have any questions that you would like to ask.
Thanks. I will take questions from the floor. Councillor Stanley, Councillor Cooney, and then Councillor Monaghan online.
Thanks very much for the report, and I'd like to welcome the active travel team's creativity in being willing to kind of course correct and have a look at is what we're doing the thing that's going to get us to where we need to go as quickly as possible and at a low cost. I think I'm nervous about when you said about relaxation of standards. That's one thing that I would be a little bit nervous about. But on a positive note, I welcome the idea of using quiet streets. I used to live in London, and I often took the route parallel to Cycle Superhighway 3 in Dalston. So they built this massive cycle superhighway, but there was also a quiet way beside it, which was actually way better. It was just quieter, there was less physical noise, there were fewer people in Lycra pushing you out of the way. So I'm really glad that we're exploring that. I think it has potential, because there's lots of little narrow roads like Long Lane or whatever in Dublin that could potentially be excellent, cycling first streets. One thing on the quiet street thing is just coming from the data workshop, we can make sure we can connect with the digital map providers to make sure that these quiet ways end up getting prioritized on your cycling routes on your Google Maps or whatever. And then the other thing I was just going to say was, I would push it to be as ambitious as possible when you can manage it. Like, I cycle today on the C2CC and also on Nassau Street, and one is a multi-million flagship project, and one was a cheap, low-cost intervention. And from the point of view of a cyclist, it makes very little difference which are on. They're both great. So if we can roll out more of the cheap stuff to get us where we're going faster, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Councillor Cooney.
Thank you, and it's good that you're looking at the Hoth Road again, because it was in 2019 that when I got elected, the last time round that we put in for something to be done, and it was before you had the Active Travel Office, and we put in discretionary budget of our own funding and the hope that that would happen, and then it seemed that it rolled over, and it seemed that it was going to happen through other means, and then we put in the rapid, and then that didn't happen because it decided to put in the permanent. So we're back to a sort of a rapid scheme. So, but I think that there needs to be, the interventions need to be more consistent across that route, because, it's a very busy route, and there's a lot of schools along it, and I'd like to see, cyclists of mixed ability using those routes, whereas if you go on and then you're back out onto into the traffic, on a road that is 50 kilometres, it's not going to work, you know what I mean, in terms of that. It'll still be the people that are using it anyway, which will have a little tiny break every so often, but sometimes that's worse because you've lost your alertness and you're straight out into the traffic again. So I'd like to see it a little bit more continuous. And what I'd really like, I love the quiet streets, I'd like to see much more of that happening. And I'm just wondering if you could look, because there's a traffic survey for the Richmond Road at the moment, wider area, a whole area, to look at what is possible on that. We have some large housing developments through the Land Development Agency that have thousands of bike parking spaces based on the fact that there is a safe way to cycle there, which there isn't yet. And that is going to be post 2028 before we look at even concepts or preliminary designs. So something like looking at a quiet street for something around there, if that's possible. There was going to be a cycle route along the Dalka, that hasn't happened. So I'm just wondering if you could look at that as part, because we'll have the traffic survey. So, you'll have measures to work on in relation to that. Thank you. So,
Councillor Monaghan.
Thanks very much. I was initially very excited when I heard about this idea, and I do think it's a great idea in principle, so fully supported in principle. I'm seriously worried that what's here in the presentation will be regarded as a prototype. A prototype is something like a model that you roll out in future. I would question, safety was referred to in the presentation. I question strongly that this would be a safe way of proceeding. I mean, just looking at the specific examples given, if these are to be prototypes, prototype one, the majority of it is there's zero protection. So once these amendments go in, once these infrastructure goes in, there remains zero protection on most of that route. Prototype two, by its nature, it's only one way, so it's obviously going to be zero protection. What I always say is, would you let your child travel on that infrastructure? That's the acid test. I wouldn't dream of it. My primary school child cycles 3 kilometres each way to school every day because it's safe, because there's a safe route. And I'm sorry, but I'm not being negative for the sake of it. I love the idea behind this, but this is not a safe route. And I don't know how many compromises need to be made. There are clearly impediments that force this kind of design, but I think we need to address the impediments and not put forward a design like this. It's not acceptable. The two prototypes that are given for the active travel route are just not good enough. So I suggest going back to drawing board. It's not a thing of looking for perfect and letting perfect be the enemy of good. This is way too far from good for it to be acceptable. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board. If this is going to be rolled out as an idea of getting active travel out across the city, we can't let these prototypes be the beginning. They're not good enough. Thanks.
Councillor Chu. Oh, Councillor Chu, you've taken your hand down. I'm going to move on for the moment. Let me know if you want to come back in. Jason.
Yep, thank you. My blinkers went right up when relaxation of cycle design manual was discussed there. You can't relax public safety measures. You just can't, right? And I'd suggest we'd have to have a lot of conversations with the legal teams internally here as to who would be responsible if the worst was to happen on any of these routes and you had delivered them not in line with current safety standards and recommendations from government. It also undermines all of the policy work that's happening at government level, and they're only in a couple of years. So I don't think that is even remotely a goer past this meeting at all to be discussed, frankly. I don't know if this is being done with the idea in mind that it will work on the proposed reduced road speed routes. That has to be done by March, I think. As per the Minister's direction, so those road speeds should, in theory, be safe for the mixing of cycling. And if they are not, as per the cycle design manual, they pretty much must have segregation. And where that brings me to my next concern is, first of all, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution. And second of all, the constituents go absolutely ballistic when you do something and then 2 or 3 years later you put in something else. So first of all, it's very wasteful. Even if it's a small amount of money, it's a waste of money. And second of all, it really undermines the good work the department does in here in terms of public faith in what they're doing. And then a couple of just specific things I wanted to come at.
As quickly as possible, please.
Yeah, the cross-city measures, they have been in place in a very temporary capacity for quite a long time now. The system works. Can we see some maybe more permanent temporary measures put in there rather than the flashing signs and things? And then finally, there's a lot of measures down at the Docklands in terms of cross-city that are in design phase. How far away are those from actually being delivered, and are they funded at the moment? Thank you.
Thanks. Kiva?
Robbie.
I just have 2 very quick points. Thanks so much. I welcome the acceleration of cheaper methods can be used, but I suppose it's weighing that up against safety. It was just on number 9, so when there's the minimum 24-hour bus cycle lane, which exists, I'm just wondering about the safety there insofar as there's the option to put in those flexi poles or those flexi ones, because we're not getting speed cameras rolled out anytime soon. So when we talk about it's all about enforcement, I think that's just not practical. So is that an option? And I don't know about the cost of modal filters, because just in terms of kind of the quiet streets, I think is a brilliant idea. But as Jason said, I'd echo that. I mean, they should be 30 kilometres per hour. But again, we don't have the luxury of maximum enforcement because we've no static or speed cameras in this country, so you're going to have to use your design to get around that. So yeah, I'm just wondering, is that another option for quiet streets? Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Jose, and then Robbie online.
Thank you. I think the quiet streets are a really good idea, but as for the rest of it, I suppose my question is why now? Because when the active travel team was set up, we were originally looking at interim measures and permanent measures. And I've been burned before. The Toth Road scheme was supposed to be an interim measure, went out to consultation in 2022, 2023. We still haven't seen the public consultation report. And then it was decided that it's not going to be an interim measure, that it's not going to work like that it's too complicated, and it was changed to a permanent scheme. And we still haven't heard anything. It's 2026. I worry that this is going to be, like, the implementation of the active travel department has been incredibly slow, and I worry that this is a way to get around that. And we're going to end up with substandard infrastructure. The time to deliver, interim measures, low-cost measures, all of this was 4 or 5 years ago. We've had an office in in situ for 4 years now. I think implementation needs to get quicker, and like much quicker.
Thanks. And Councillor Chu, I think you're back.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, my laptop wasn't working. Just on following up my council colleagues' question, Michelle, on in terms of interim versus permanent. I guess in terms of the working strategic plan in your office in terms of active travel, to roll out these interim measures, which I fully welcome the Quiet Street ones. How does it go against then the rollout of the overall plans? Because obviously it's a resource problem as well. I'm looking at, yes, having interim measures is a good thing, as others have said, but I'm also worried, apart from the funding, designating resources that seem to not be available in active travel at the moment because you don't have enough manpower. Is it going to affect the permanent measures and the plans that we have? And also, does this shrink the ambition for future to have better plans for active travel, because it shouldn't stay at the current ones? But saying that, the quiet ways, I can just imagine it being a lot better for kids going to Sing Street School, people going to the Liberties. It'll just provide a better route. But on that, I know councillors have proposed quiet ways in this council before 10 years ago, and they got shot down left, right and centre by other colleagues. So for this to be proposed, I just want to make sure that the I guess relevant stakeholders are managed, and it doesn't become this dogfight within the community about having infrastructure in the community that's needed. Thanks.
Thanks. Any other? Zoe?
Yep. Sorry, my hand was up, Robbie.
Sorry, yeah, Robbie, I'll take you first. Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll just to ask that they probably are. I know the executive team will bear this in mind, but just to make sure that that access, or that blue badge vehicles retain the ability to be able to access areas. 95% of Dublin streets is a lot, and so you're going to be going by a lot of residential areas, and including people who are blue badge vehicle owners who absolutely depend and rely on those. They need to be able to have easy access to and from, safe access to and from, safe for everybody, to and from their homes. Thank you.
Thanks. Zoe?
I'd just like to see that other streets are considered, East Wall, Sheriff Street, Drumcondra. We don't just look at the easy streets on the south side, which are already quiet. I think it's got really great potential for the communities to have less noise, less pollution. So yeah, really fond of the idea, but I'd like to see what other areas are being considered. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, look, just to add my own comments, I would really echo, I think, the cautionary notes that have come through from the chamber here. Like, I just don't recognise this as being a step that has learned lessons from previous chapters at all. We have seen a lot of back and forth in Dublin City Council over whether we are doing temporary routes, whether we're doing interim routes, whether we're doing permanent ones, whether we're aiming for 5-star quality, whether we're aiming for quick and dirty versions of things. And we've really, the idea that now we are kind of going to take backward steps on standards, and I don't see this as a positive step forward, in all honesty. I think we've had multiple conversations today about the importance of data, and I'll reiterate the point that I really think that every bit of infrastructure and every bit of spending by the active travel team has to reflect the ambitions of the development plan, and has to reflect the idea that we are trying to achieve a modal shift. We know that we will not, and again, show me the data if this isn't the case, but I am, having spent years looking at this stuff, I'm pretty confident in saying we know the reason we are not going to get that modal shift is until we really tackle the pinch points of the city and grasp the nettle of some of the hardest junctions. That means that, and I, have had the pleasure of knocking on doors all around the Dublin Central area in the last number of months, parents will not put their children to school if it means cycling along Dorset Street, because it is absolutely you know, horrific to envisage a child having to dodge the buses in that way. If we want to get the modal shift, if we particularly want to achieve our ambitions for children cycling to school, we have to tackle those routes, and we have to tackle the hardest, the junctions. The junctions are always the dangerous parts of any route, and this is not. I can see some potential in the Quiet Streets approach, but I just don't see enough here to say that this is evidence that it is going to address the gap between what we are doing at the moment and where we need to get to. I think there's also that aspect, and this is a concern I've had with the active travel team for a while, about the kind of inductive versus deductive approach. If we start with the ambition and say this is where we're trying to get to, and we say what is going to deliver us there, it's a very different picture than saying what is the easiest thing for us to deliver. And you will get very different answers to that. And I think at the moment you are asking the question of what can we deliver without causing too many problems or without coming up with too many obstacles. And I don't think that's the question that we should be asking at the moment. I think we need to say, what do we need to deliver to keep people safe in the city, to make sure nobody is suffering minor, serious or life-threatening injuries as a result of trying to get around by bike. And I think it will produce a very different report than what we have in front of us here. I would also say that the Dublin Cycling Campaign consistently meets with the Dublin City Council and proposes quick fix solutions, as they often call it, like counterflow cycle lanes, for example, do a huge amount to connect on 30 kph streets, do a huge amount to connect areas that are otherwise can cause people to take detours. You know, just see the difference it makes to be able to cycle straight ahead at the top of O'Connell Street up Parnell Square, as opposed to having to take on the Lewis tracks and take on three sides of Parnell Square as you used to do. Those kind of initiatives make a huge difference to safety, to convenience, to the capacity to connect, and I see that as really important. And I think looking at those quick fixes, doing kind of wider consultation on what could be cheap and easy to get done, I think would be great. And I think that maybe we need to do something a little bit more like neighbourhood traffic schemes, and we need to resource that department at the council instead of trying to do this through the Active Travel Office necessarily. And I'm sorry to be so negative about it, because I do really want to see Active Travel initiative accelerated. I just don't recognise in this a cohesive plan to do so, to be honest. So that's, sorry, but handing back to you, Michelle. And thank you.
No, thank you. Look, we hear what you're saying. I want to go through and answer some of the questions specifically. Overall, obviously, safety is paramount. It goes without saying. We wanted to address the question that we were asked in the time that we were given. And there was a lot of deliberations in the office about how we could do that. These were just some solutions that we came up with that we felt may work, may not. Now, they need an awful lot more assessment in them, and you know, I'll kind of go through some of the questions, but some of my colleagues here will be able to answer some more of the technical questions that you've asked. You know, we welcome all of the support that you've given us, and that goes without saying. And we are trying to be a bit more ambitious, and we are trying to roll out the network as quickly as we can, given a lot of the constraints that we're under. But we are, you know, very welcome to hear about the Quiet Streets and the support behind that. I don't know if my colleague Jeremy Wells would like to answer some of the questions on the Quiet Streets. Maybe he could answer just one or two, or give kind of an overview about the positivity towards that.
So can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. So yeah, the Quiet Streets, this is something that we're quite enthusiastic about. It's something that we've picked two routes, one on the south side, one on the north side, the south side being the Stephen's Green to Thomas Street route, and on the north side, the Parnell Street to Prussia Street. But these are two routes that we feel, I mean, I think they maybe embody all the pleasure you can get from cycling and walking on the streets, that maybe they're not, as maybe Councillor Stanley said, you know, they're not maybe a cycling highway. These are quiet streets that, you know, maybe are more amenable for people to walk or cycle along, and particularly for kids. These are routes that have low trafficked environments, they've got low speeds. We may look at introducing some greening and planting, chicanes, some additional traffic calming measures to further reduce traffic speeds and make them safer. We are conscious that we do want to connect these routes. We selected those routes because they do connect with Bus Connect's routes with other active travel schemes, and we will look at other schemes. We have got other routes that we've kind of shortlisted that we will look at. So yeah, that's kind of maybe a quick overview of those particular schemes. As Michelle said, we will look at this year designing these routes with a view to taking them to construction for next year. So, yeah, that's about it.
I'd just like to further add as well that this was never to take away from our priority schemes. Our priority schemes are, as we have informed you before, and we will be continuing to develop them and take them to design and construction as we had always intended. I just maybe if David might answer some of the more technical points that may have arisen, he should be able to answer some there.
Thanks, Michelle. No, yeah, we note the concerns, I suppose, on the relaxations and some of the concerns some of the councillors have. And I suppose, as Michelle pointed out there, we were kind of asked to look at this, kind of to see if there was kind of quicker interventions we could introduce on top of our kind of current programme of active travel schemes we have. And then, as Michelle says, they're not affected by this. So the next steps is really just an assessment. So the assessment might, you know, more than likely a lot of these places may not be possible to provide interventions, as some of the councillors have pointed out in terms of the Holt Road. No, Councillor Mona noted some issues there, and it's only an example in the very kind of short duration we had to respond to this. So all this is really just to look at and assess the routes. And I think the quiet streets is one that we discussed in the office as well, with Jeremy's lead on it, in terms of it's something that's quite positive. I think even today we've kind of heard that from yourselves, so we're quite positive on the quiet streets that we can deliver something there. Yeah, so on the technical aspects of the relaxations and things, yeah, that's something we'd have to obviously assess, and this is all subject then to, I suppose, approval and funding as well if we were to progress it, you know, further on. So, I think that's all kind of, there was no particular other questions really, more kind of observations, but thanks you for your time on that one.
Can I just clarify two things? One is the quiet streets one, it does seem to me that it would be better done through the neighbourhood traffic, which would be under the traffic and transport team. Why is this coming through active travel instead?
We, just in response to the question that we were asked, we wanted to look at a number of options. This was brought to the table. Jeremy is part of our architect multidisciplinary team, as you know, being an architect, and he brought this to ourselves to have a look at it, and we've been exploring it. I mean, there are other, you know, we're not just all engineers. I'm a planner, there's architects in the team, so it was just felt, in order to respond to this, that this would be a good option to perhaps look at and explore. And as I said, it's still only at an exploration kind of stage and an assessment stage.
Okay.
So we obviously will take on board exactly what you say, and it may be that it is not for active travel, or it may be something that active travel can absolutely pursue quite efficiently and effectively within the team, the core team that we have at the moment.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, Chair. Just very briefly myself. Can I just ask who initiated this kind of, inquiry? It seems to be, is it the NTA that initiated this, or is this coming from Dublin City Council's active travel unit themselves, or is it coming from Dublin City Council's own traffic and transport section within Dublin City Council? It seems to be kind of rather odd, and very kind of, how would you put it?
Okay, thanks, Councillor.
Not very sure of itself. Not very sure. Can I ask who's initiating this?
Yeah.
Is this the NTA again?
Thanks, just getting the manager to respond now.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councillor Flynn. This is on foot of the emergency motion that was tabled at the last, in advance of the last council meeting. So the Lord Mayor accepted the emergency motion and referred it to the SPC. So this is the response to the emergency motion, which was sent to the active travel team. And the quiet roads, just in response to the chair, that proposal was, I suppose, put together in consultation with the traffic team as well. So there is some input from the traffic team. Thank you.
But all the other aspects of it,
and
in relation to regulation.
Can I I'm just going to respond now for a minute, please.
Yeah.
So, folks, obviously there's a significant amount of caution coming from the committee here. Is there, will you be reverting, kind of incorporating some of that and reverting to us with a sort of revision of this in some way? Because I would just be, hope that the committee feedback is taken on board.
Absolutely. Everything will be taken on board that we've heard today. It was our intention, regardless, because we only had a number of weeks to do this, that perhaps come back at the next SPC, which I believe would be maybe in September, or if it's preferred to kind of really interrogate this more to even the next one after that and come back or with some proposal to you, or to just confirm exactly what we are or aren't doing.
Okay, thanks. Okay, folks, we'll call that one and we'll move on to the next item, which is Marie Gavin is...
Was that noted, that report,
Grow
Chair?
College Green project.